You can go to church for years. You can learn the language, participate in the activities, and still never come to terms with what Christianity actually requires of you. You can know how Christians speak. You can know what to say at the right time. You can learn what someone else once called Christianese, a language that makes you sound different from all the people around you. And because you know the language and follow the patterns, you can begin to believe that those things are Christianity. But I no longer believe they are. The danger is not simply that we may be doing too many religious activities. The deeper danger is that those activities can give us the assurance that we are following Jesus while protecting us from the very surrender he called for, the very yielding that he called for. We can become comfortable with a form of Christianity that never asks us to lose ourselves. We can learn how to look Christian without ever allowing our own will to fall away. My family and I have been through the crucible during the last 2 years. We've gone through what I can only describe as the valley of the shadow of death. Everything has been stripped from us. Everything. I'm not saying that lightly or using dramatic language to make a point. I'm speaking about what these last 2 years have felt like for us. And through that stripping, I have been forced to reconsider much of what I once understood Christianity to be. I've spent years around churches and Christian institutions. I was part of the Reformed Church in South Africa, and I frequented other Christian institutions and organizations and spent time there, lots of time. There were activities, there were obligations, there were established forms and patterns. There was a particular way of speaking and behaving. Some good things were present. There was generosity, there was kindness, there was service. But I've come to believe that some of the most important parts of Christianity were largely absent. What if the central issue is not whether you attend church, whether you serve, you give, you know the right language? What if the central issue is whether you are still trying to keep possession of your own life? Jesus said that the person who tries to preserve his life will lose it, while the person who loses his life for his sake will find it. That teaching appears in passages such as Matthew 10 verse 39 and Luke 9:24. Jesus also said, "Deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me." That is found in Luke 9 verse 23. Those are not small statements. They're not decorative additions to Christianity. They go directly to the center of what it means to follow him. If we remove the real implication of those words, we are not merely simplifying Christianity, we may be removing the very thing Jesus placed at its center. If self-denial becomes a religious phrase rather than a lived reality, then we can retain our own will, protect our own desires, arrange our own lives, and still tell ourselves that we are following Jesus. The issue is not whether we can repeat his words. The issue is whether we are willing to allow those words to dismantle us. When I speak about denying yourself, I'm speaking about something far deeper than adding another Christian obligation to your week. I'm speaking about letting go of your will completely. I'm speaking about reaching the point where your desires no longer occupy the throne of your life. That is difficult to hear because most of us want God to help us fulfill our desires. We want him to bless what we have already decided. We want him to protect the life we have built. But Jesus didn't say, improve your life and bring me along. He spoke about losing your life. He spoke about denying yourself. He spoke about carrying a cross daily. I rarely heard the full implication of that call taught in church. Perhaps individuals sometimes stumble upon it because their hearts are genuinely bent on finding God. Perhaps they begin to see that following Jesus must involve more than institutional participation. But as a central, clearly taught reality, I've seldom encountered it. And I believe that matters. It matters because church involvement can be added to the life I already possess. I can place church on my calendar. I can learn the terminology. I can adopt the exact behavior. I can serve in a particular role. But losing my life cannot simply be added to my existing life. It confronts my existing life. It confronts my insistence on having my own way. It confronts the desires I've protected. It confronts my assumption that my will should remain intact while God helps me achieve it. That is why I've come to see such a sharp difference between Christianity and much of what is presented as Christianity in the church. I'm not saying that everything within the church is false. As I said, there can be real generosity, real kindness, and real service. There can be individuals who deeply desire God. But those good things do not remove the question Jesus asked of every person who would follow him. Will you deny yourself? Will you take up your cross daily? Will you follow him when following him means your will is no longer the ruling force in your life? That question cannot be answered through Christian language. It cannot be answered by attendance. It cannot be answered by identifying with a denomination or institution. It can only be answered in the life itself. And this is part of what the crucible has revealed to me. When everything is being stripped away, Christian language does not sustain you merely because it sounds familiar. Activities do not answer the deepest questions of surrender. The patterns that once made you feel secure may no longer be available. You're brought face to face with what you actually believe, what you actually desire, and what you are still refusing to release. That is where Christianity becomes more than a culture. That is where the words of Jesus stop being religious statements and become a direct challenge to the life you've been trying to preserve. I believe many of us want the life Jesus gives without losing the life we already have. We want resurrection without the cross. We want the will of God, provided it agrees with our own. We want to follow Jesus, provided the destination resembles the future we imagine for ourselves. But the invitation remains what it has always been. Deny yourself, take up your cross daily, follow me. That's not Christianese. That's not the cultural marker that separates us from the world. That's the surrender of the person we have been trying to protect. And until that surrender becomes real, we should at least have the honesty to ask whether we've been practicing Christianity or merely participating in Christian culture. I began by saying that you can go to church for years and still miss Christianity. You can learn the language, you can follow the forms, you can perform the activities, you can appear to possess everything associated with the Christian life. But the central question remains untouched. Are you still trying to keep your life, or are you willing to lose it for the sake of following Jesus? Christianity is not proved by how Christian your life appears. It is revealed by whether your life is still your own.